Good morning. How's everybody doing? This is Mr. Mike from the Mechanicsburg Learning Center with episode 50 of Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day. 50 days in a row we've been doing this, weekends included, holidays. Of course, we don't celebrate those anymore. But at any rate, we're going to tell you about another animal today for the 50th time in a row, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in live on Facebook, and I'd like to thank you for going to the Mr. Mike Sgrignoli YouTube page and subscribing and liking our videos and all the wonderful things that you've done these past 50 days. Today's animal. Well, today's animal is pronounced, I've seen it 3 or 4 different ways. I've gone on to YouTube and listened to scientists pronounce the name of the animal. There absolutely is no consensus, and there's an explanation for the way they pronounce it each time because they believe they're right. So I'm going to do it the way I believe it's correct, and if you see it differently, so be it. It could be that way. The problem is when you're writing a story about an animal and you're trying to rhyme with it, you want to be as absolutely clear as possible in terms of knowing how to pronounce it. So I went with the consensus, and I'm going to pronounce it Doedicurus. Doedicurus. The word is spelled Doedicurus. So it looks like Doedicurus, 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 I've heard it at least 5 different ways. So today we're going to say Doedicurus. Doedicurus was a really cool looking animal. You may recognize it from some particular animated films. I will show you a model that I have of it. Take a look at this. This is Doedicurus. Very interesting animal in many aspects. First of which is just crazy, bizarre looking. Now, there is some speculation that when these things went extinct, it was about 10,000 years ago. So they've lived anywhere from about 1 million years ago the whole way up to about 10,000 years ago when they all disappeared. It is from the family of Glyptodonts. And Glyptodon is a species, and I'll show you a model of that in a moment. And they named them after that. So they're called Glyptodonts. And Glyptodonts, the word means carved tooth, meaning that the tooth itself had ridges in it. So it was really good at eating tough grasses and chewing them up. Definitely not a carnivore, definitely a plantivore, herbivore, or let's say vegetarian. So on our 50th episode, we are focusing on Doedicurus. Notice too what else this animal possesses. Very interesting, what we call carapace. This is the carapace right here. Okay, the carapace is its outer shell, very hard. It protected the animal because if a big animal came by and wanted to get it, such as what was existing at the time, Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, these giant terror birds, the carnivorous birds that did not fly but had very, very strong beaks, if they could flip this animal on its back and get to its belly, that's how they would hurt it and make it its meal. So the carapace was very helpful in keeping it safe, just like a turtle. Also, if you look closely, Doedicurus had a little plate. These are called osteoderms, those skin bones. Also had some osteoderms on its head to keep the head safe. It had some fur, okay? Big feet, but not long feet. They were kind of stubby, and of course, the business end of the animal, this thing could probably do damage. They think that some of these, most of the time when they use this club on its tail, which kind of resembles an ankylosaur, they weren't really doing damage to predators or trying to, because they didn't really have good eyesight. Because if you think about it, if some animal's coming up behind you and you have this big old carapace on you, it's really hard for you to see around it. So it didn't have a lot of let's call it peripheral vision in terms of being able to see around it. So it might have just swung the tail haphazardly and maybe just used the tail to bounce against its pals as it was fighting for a mate or dominance in its herd. Didn't move very fast. The name Doedicurus means pestle tail. Now, if you've ever heard the word pestle, it's usually been associated with the words mortar. So when you talk about mortar and pestle is a long, let's call it a tiny club with a bigger end, like this, with a bigger end, and then a bowl, and that's how you would grind up, let's say, spices and things like that. So it reminded scientists of that, which is why they called it pestle tail, if you would take these giant spikes off it. Pestle, mortar and pestle, so that's what the name means, pestle tail. Discovered and named in 1874 by Hermann Burmeister. Interestingly enough, when we talk about when they go extinct about 10,000 years ago, that kind of coincides with the emergence of humanoids like us, humans, early humans. And we think that not only did humans probably hunt them for their meat, but they may in fact have used this, what was the word I used? Carapace. They may have used it for shelter, because this animal was about the size of a small car. It's definitely, what's it look like? It looks like a current day animal. It kind of looks like an armadillo. And research was done in 2016. They wanted to find out, okay, is it a distant relative to the armadillo, or does it just look like an armadillo? Because the armadillo has that armor on the back. Now the difference is that this thing was very hard and did not flex, whereas the armadillo could actually roll itself up into a ball. It had a little armor in its head, has a little armor in its head, and it could protect itself like that. Doedicurus could not do that. But, so they did this study to try to find out, is this thing related to the armadillo? Well, in fact, when they studied the DNA, which they were able to retrieve from one of the ancient carapaces that they discovered, they found that not only is it related to the armadillo, it is in fact on the same lineage as an armadillo. So in fact, it is an armadillo, just a big one, about the size of, let's call it a Volkswagen Beetle. Imagine seeing an armadillo that size. Well, that's what they discovered. So now let's give you a look at its brethren. Now these are not in scale, obviously. These are just two different models. This, folks, is the Glyptodon. And the Glyptodon looks remarkably similar with one huge exception. Okay? No spikes on the tail. In fact, no club on the tail either. It was just straight. It did have some armored protection, but you can see the differences here. Very similar animals, but definitely different species, but they are related to each other. So this is a Glyptodon, and this is Doedicurus. So Doedicurus grew to about 13 feet long. It was maybe about 5 feet tall up to the top of its carapace. As I said, it lived from about 1 million to maybe 11,000 years ago when they all went extinct. Discovered in South America, specifically the Argentina area. As I said, it was probably hunted by early humans, and it had some difficulty seeing around the carapace itself. Let's talk about its head for a second. The fact that it's got armor on its head is great. Now let's talk about the mouth. It did not have front teeth. Doesn't really show you too well here. Looks more like I don't know, a chipmunk. Okay. So it didn't have front teeth, but it did have side grinding teeth. So it munched and munched on leaves. Interestingly, too, they're trying to figure out if the spikes in the tail had anything to do with the fact that it may have been male. So maybe the males had the spikes and the females did not. Let's get to our poem for episode number 50 of Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day, brought to you by the Mechanicsburg Learning Center. Thank you so much for sharing these on Facebook. Thank you for going to Mr. Mike Sgrignoli's YouTube page. And soon enough, we'll be celebrating number 100. The Doedicurus. Imagine if you saw an armadillo that had spouted to over 13 feet, as many scientists have touted. You'd think I was ridiculous to make this declaration. Let's introduce Doedicurus with some clarification. His tail was pestle-shaped, and had sharp spikes erupting from it. So if you got too close, he'd swing it down on you and you'd plummet. The tail was quite conspicuous and nicely integrated. The tail of the Doedicurus was strongly armed and weighted. His back is called a carapace, resembling a turtle. If predators would try to lunge, they had to face this hurdle. The armor on his back kept them at bay if they got nosy. The back of the Doedicurus, it kept him safe and cozy. He had back teeth for chewing grass, but front teeth, those were missing. And though he didn't smile much, it worked out great for kissing. His brothers are the glyptodonts with grooved teeth made for munching. The mouth of the Doedicurus excelled at veggie crunching. Atop his head, an armor plate provided some protection from fang-filled beasts that wandered in his general direction. Although it helped a bit, it likely wasn't a game changer. The head of the Doedicurus avoided present danger. I hope you found Doedicurus both wondrous and appealing. I hope you paid attention to the facts I've been revealing. I hope you were engaged and didn't lie down with your pillow. Remember the Doedicurus, the giant armadillo. Doedicurus, a fact-packed dino rhyme by Mr. Mike, brought to you by the Mechanicsburg Learning Center. We do this every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We review a different ancient animal, sometimes dinosaur, sometimes pterosaur, and sometimes a strange-looking beast, a glyptodont known as Doedicurus. Remember to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. We will do it again tomorrow. Thanks for enjoying episode number 50, and we'll do it again real soon.